Hello, my name is Craig Anderson, and I'm making a video today about the drive gear and the driven gear in a General Motors transmission. I have no idea if Ford and Chrysler are similar to this. This car, we've been using it at the racetrack, and now we're going to drive it on the street a lot more. So we've gotten rid of the slicks, put on street tires. I'm trying to get we put a 700 R4 in it, and we haven't had a speedometer for years. There was nothing wrong with the speedometer. The speedometer cable twisted up and broke. The cable literally got locked up inside the cable housing. So when I hooked it up to this 700 R4 transmission, it broke the driven gear, and we didn't bother to fix it. So because we didn't care what the speedometer said, we were running at the track. We weren't driving that much on the street, and when we did, we could tell how fast we were going by the tach. With the 700 R4, this thing cruises at 60 miles an hour at 2,000 RPM. So that's how we drove it most of the time. But now I'm not restoring the car, but putting it back into a functional street car, getting the turn signals, the headlights, all that stuff working. Anyway, what we found was the driven gear inside the transmission was broken, so I ordered the new correct one. I found out what the correct one was by going to Monster Transmission and using their gear calculator. With 28-inch tall tires and a 355 rear gear, this took the number 39 tooth gear, which is bronze colored. I put it all in the way that Bowtie Overdrive's, this is the Bowtie Overdrive's holder, and the speedometer cable screws onto this. It's different than the General Motors one, but I assume they work the same way. I looked on the internet to see if there was any adjustments, because after I assembled all this, the speedometer worked not very well. It didn't work at all when it was cold. As it warmed up, it started to work, but jumped all over the place. I thought maybe that was the cable, so I re-lubed the cable. That didn't make any difference. I came to the conclusion that the gears weren't meshing, and as they warmed up in a hot transmission, they started to engage, and eventually they would work after you'd been driving for 45 minutes. So I assumed that the gear mesh was wrong, and I didn't know how to adjust that. So I pulled this stuff apart, and I checked it for eccentricity or concentricity, whichever is correct. You can see that it's egg-shaped, just like a cam, and that means that these two securing holes, the clamp that holds this thing into the transmission can only go on one way. These holes are supposed to keep it from turning, from spinning inside the tranny. It doesn't spin anyway because it's a pretty tight fit with a rubber O-ring. But those holes had a pin in them, and then it was bolted to the outside of the tranny. That kept it from coming out and from spinning. Well, the holes aren't in the right spot because I had it assembled correctly by the holes, and it was not engaging. So I concluded that this thing had to be eccentric, which it is. But I couldn't find any of that on the internet. I couldn't find anybody explaining this. So I'm just telling you, if you're scratching your head, wondering why your General Motors transmission speedo doesn't work, it could be that you just have to spin this thing till the high spot's on the bottom, and it pushes the gear up into the driven gear. That's all, folks.